So we'll wait for one more minute, Reshma, and then we'll begin.
Sure, ma'am.
All right, we still have people joining in. That's wonderful, lovely. Yes, wonderful. Yes, thank you, Vandana. Thank you for writing that. Yes, we are very eager to hear you, Ms. Vandana. Super, super. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Yes, so let's start. Greetings, my dear friends. Welcome to a very vibrant and lively platform, the Association for Primary Education and Research, APER. We are very, very happy and by your overwhelming response and participation, and wholeheartedly welcome each one of you here today. So my name is Kusum Kanwar, and I'm the APA National Core Committee member and the mentor of territories Telangana and Mumbai, Malad Payandar. So today it is my great honor and pleasure to present the Association for Primary Education and Research workshop series by Mumbai, that's Malad Bhayandar territory. A huge gratitude to ECA President Dr. Swati Popadwats for continuously creating and fostering nurturing environments for the well-being of all children, her teams, like all of us, and for every educator out there and in the country. Gratefulness and appreciation to the entire national team, APER national team, all leaders and members for constantly supporting and encouraging APER initiatives. These July August series of free professional development workshops are organized and synchronized by two very dynamic, vibrant, and self motivated territory heads of Mumbai, Malad Bhai, and the territory. Dr. Jaya Parikh, the principal of Ram Ratna International School, and Dr. Seema Negi, director principal, Sanjeevani World School. Thank you for having such prolific speakers and pertinent topics for all of us in these COVIDian times. APER, so Association for Primary Education and Research, is tailored around promoting growth mindset, which will help ignite the human greatness. APER supports teacher training and programs that help in promoting the holistic development of children by promoting creativity, strengthening self directed learning skills, imbibing core values, as well as helping adopt a healthy lifestyle. Association for Primary Education and Research is a non-profit initiative that brings together professionals, educators, educationalists with the vision to let quality education for primary children be the right of every child everywhere. APER is one-stop connection needed by all primary years stakeholders for enrichment, networking, awareness, and advocacy for children and everything that affects them to ensure that children in primary years are assured care and education with a smooth transition from early years to primary schools. So APER aims to ensure that every educationalist in this country gets access to latest research, resources, training that I've just spoken about. So as I conclude, I thank Ms. Reshma, the ECA APER head office, she's the coordinator for all our events and the national coordinator, you can say, for relentlessly managing all these APER events so efficiently. To all our participants, thank you once again for being a part of all APER professional development workshops that we bring to you in these challenging times. So we are inspired by your enthusiasm and passion to learn and implement the golden nuggets, from our platform in your remote teaching that you do in schools. We also encourage you to join our WhatsApp groups to stay updated on all our initiatives. Please email your name, your WhatsApp number, your location to ecaadmin@gmail.com. Be mindful, admin here is without the I. So thank you and look forward to great synergies here today. And as I hand over the virtual stage now to the magnificent, marvelous, and very dependable Miss Michelle Joseph, who's on our screen today. She's a coordinator of Sanjeevani World School. I take great pleasure in introducing this lively, very committed educator who has on many platforms introduced me. So here I'm very delighted to hand over the baton to her today. She's a highly evolved educator, writer, blogger, anchor, host, trainer, founder of Ray of Hope Chat Show. So we hope to be on her chat show one day. So the implications of her passion are multifold, exploring various dimensions. She divulged into being a writer, blogger, anchor, host, trainer, where hope is not lost, but built, bringing out a real persona. The maxim that she believes in is to teach, is to touch a life forever. So many of you out there are doing that. We are so happy to have you here with us on APA platform, Miss Michelle. Miss Michelle is going to be introducing Miss Vandana Joshil, the speaker for today. Thank you, and over to you, Miss Michelle.
Thank you so much, Kusum ma'am. That was really welcoming and a warm introduction. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on APA. So I would like to begin by saying it's like everyone tells a story about themselves inside their own head all the time. That story makes you what you are. We build ourselves out of that story. And these stories are never ending. They're never ending journeys. They are hidden talents. They're suppressed memories, all waiting to be told. We all have a distinct definition of a story. The issue or the challenge is most of the times it's in our heads and we never let it out. So on behalf of APA, I warmly welcome each one to the Professional Development Workshop, today being conducted by Miss Vandana Joshil ma'am. The title being Relatable versus Popular Imagery in Primary Education. I understand what I see. The reason why I introduced the session today about stories is because ma'am is a storyteller. She's a content writer and managing director of LAJA, that is LAJA, a forum for women. She is an active team member of RINS Academy Private Limited, a training institute that focuses on the holistic and overall growth of children, adolescents, teens, and young adults. She has moderated many discussions online and offline and manages to bring out the insightful takeaways from any discussion. So, ma'am, we give it over to you, and we're all ears to get those lovely nuggets, those lovely insights from you this evening. So I give it over to you, ma'am, to take it forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Kusum ma'am. Thank you to ECA, APER. Thank you to Swati ma'am, Dr. Jaya Parekh for, inviting me here and giving me this opportunity to talk about a subject that is really very, very close to me. And like Michelle said, how stories are something that we all grow up on, whether it's stories that our grandparents tell us, whether it is stories that we see on TV, whether it's stories that we read out of books. Stories are something that really build the foundation to all the imaginative and all the creative outputs that we get to do later on in life. And this is a wonderful, wonderful way of not just connecting with the child, but also showing the child many things that probably, it's about glamorizing the mundane. So you could pick up an ant and talk about a story of an ant, and suddenly the wings that the ant has, which it usually doesn't use to fly, you suddenly put a cape around it and make the ant an Ant-Man, and there you have, one of the superheroes of movies these days. So that is what storytelling is all about. But my topic here is not just about storytelling. Can I share my presentation?
Sure, ma'am, you can go ahead.
Yes. All right. So I was talking about how storytelling is important. But I believe that, during these formative years, these children who walk into school at the age of 2.5, 3, 4, this is an age where you try to show them the entire world. You try to, let them explore. But we also have to remember that they are, still just coming out of the confines of their home. They're just getting used to being away from their parents. So this is a big, bad world for them. To make it easy, to make it fun, to make it relatable is what we need to be doing. So the topic relatable versus popular, I will start with giving an example. So, there are a couple of things that I wondered when I was teaching children. My children, was teaching my neighbors' kids. And I realized that there are a couple of things that, we've been learning when we were kids. Probably our parents learned the same. And we're teaching our children the same without really questioning it, without really understanding it, or without really trying to figure out where it is relatable. How do I relate this to what I see or what I'm doing? Now, to give you an example of that, now if we talk about the fruit apple, you say the word apple and immediately there's an image in your mind. Some of us would have thought about a red apple, some would have thought of a green apple, some probably, those who come from the hills would have thought of a small apple, some would have thought of a big apple. The apples that we buy from the supermarkets these days, so the kids would have thought of an apple with a sticker on it which says that where its place of origin. You can also go so far as to think of an apple with wax on it which you clean off before you start eating. So that is an apple for all of us. But if you talk about fruits like durian, rambutan, or mangosteen, how many of us can quickly visualize that in our minds? Maybe those of us who come from the hills or, from places where these fruits originate, maybe we can think of that right away. But what about those who have never seen it? So to take this a little bit further, I'll explain a little bit more. So I have spent my summer vacations in the Nilgiris. And I remember walking through the markets over there and enjoying, relishing, and devouring these, mangosteens, peaches, plums, and, enjoying every little bit of those fruit. Even vegetables like artichoke, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, asparagus. Of course, you get that now here. But when we were growing up, it was available only in those markets up there in the hills or touristy places. So for me, if somebody, in a random conversation, if somebody spoke about Brussels sprouts, I had an image of Brussels sprouts in my mind. I knew what it looked like. I also knew what it felt like, and I also knew what it tasted like. But for my husband, who grew up in Gujarat, these were alien concepts. He probably read it in a book somewhere, but he could never relate to it. It made no sense to him. So when I had children, and thankfully by the time they were growing up, we had supermarkets which would import these fruits and these exotic fruits and vegetables. So I would buy them for my children so that they could also have that touch feel. They could touch a mangosteen, they could peel it, they could see how the color bleeds out of the skin onto their fingers, they could see the white inners, they could taste it, get that tangy flavor. So my children also relate. When you say mangosteen to them, they also have an image in their mind. Now, why is that important? That is important because that is where, that picture is from where we start. So let me come back to my topic. Why am I talking about relatable versus popular imagery? So what are we trying to do in schools actually? When we are talking about, children in school, what are we trying to teach them? We are trying to teach them languages. We're trying to teach them maths. Trying to bring them about a general awareness, life skills, EVS. So in languages, we try to teach them words, concepts. We explain pictures. We help them make stories. When we talk about maths, we're teaching them numbers, shapes at that, formative years. And when you're talking about general awareness, we're talking about the environment, we're talking about life skills. These are the things that we're generally talking about. But when we're trying to teach all of these children all of this, what are we really doing? What do we use as imagery? This is a poem that our parents have probably sung. We have definitely sung it. Our children have also sung it some point in time. So let's all sing along. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Very simple, very sweet, has a lovely rhythm to it. There is like a thump, 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 ta-da, ta-da, ta-da to it. It sounds very nice. And I'm also guilty of, putting my children to bed singing this. When my babies were really small, I never knew how to sing lullaby. So I would sing all these nursery rhymes. And there was a point in time when I was scared that, once these kids go to school, as soon as the teacher would sing a nursery rhyme, they're probably going to fall asleep, because that's how I use these. But then when I was singing this to my children and to the children who came to me, one fine day, I had a child who came up to me and asked me some questions which made me stop in my tracks. Those questions and that child is what led to me wanting to explore this a little bit more. So let's start with the basics. What are the questions that that child asked me? Ma'am, are they poor? So I looked at him and I said, why are you asking me that? What makes you think that these children are poor? So he says, ma'am, in my house, when I want water, all I need to do is open the tap. I don't need to go to a well. Why are Jack and Jill going up to a well? So I said, well, you know what? This is the village. Probably Jack and Jill are in the village and they have to go up a hill and get water. And it's not as simple as that. So he thought a little bit more. And then he said, man, don't they have parents? Now that shook me. Why is this child asking me such a question? So I asked him again, why are you asking me this? So he says, ma'am, if I want water and I say, Mama Pani, Mama will get up, she will go to the kitchen and bring me a glass of water. Or Dadi would do that. Or maybe the maid in the house would do that. I have never had to go get myself a glass of water. So then I said, you know what? You're lucky. But you have to become self-sufficient. If you want a glass of water, I think you can jolly well walk up to the kitchen and get it yourself. Why do you want to bother Mama and Daddy or Dadi and your maid? So he nodded. Then he asked me, okay, now you tell me, why are these children working? Papa has told me that child labor is banned. Why are these children working? So I again asked him, what makes you think they are working? So he says, you're telling me that they don't have taps at home for water. You're telling me that their parents are home, but still these two have to climb up the hill to get a pail of water. Isn't that child labor? And I laughed because I found that question so pertinent, so heavy. But then I couldn't, laugh at his face because the child genuinely wanted to know. So I said, no, that's not how it is. And I tried to, brush the child labor thing under the carpet. And I said, they are having fun. They want to go to the well. It's so much fun when you go to your nanny's house. Don't you go to the well? So then he said, what is a well? So that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I said, and I realized that, most of these children that we are catering to, we are educating, all of us are educators here. Our children come from gated communities. They come from societies, multi-storied complexes. They have probably never seen a well. Lucky few who still do have roots in villages and their grandparents live there, they probably still go there and get to see a well. But this well is not something that they are well versed with. They have never seen it. They don't understand what it is. Now, this is one example. Let me go to the next one. Humpty Dumpty. Again, a very favored poem. All of us have sung it. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty together again. I love this poem. Popular imagery. We have all seen it. We've even had birthday parties with Humpty Dumpty as a theme. The question's asked here. How can you make an egg sit on a wall? Because if you take an egg and keep it on a platform, it'll wobble. It'll fall off. How can you make this egg sit on a wall? And ma'am, when the egg falls, it will crack. It'll be a mess. Why would somebody want to get into that mess, collect all those shells, pieces of shells, and stick it up together? This is such a, for want of another word, this is such a dumb poem. Now, whoever wrote this poem, whenever this poem was written, in whichever era it was written, it probably had a context at that time. For us now, in this generation, there is no context. It actually sounds very funny. And it somewhere, it trivializes the whole concept that we are trying to teach our children. I could be wrong here. This is my opinion. But I believe that somewhere children are sitting up and asking us questions like this. Today's generation is a generation of children who know how to ask, who want to know more, who keep pestering you with questions. And we as parents, we as educators, if we are unable to answer those questions, we are failing them. We are not failing us, we are failing them. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this is a poem that I loved, because like I said, it has a lovely tempo to it. It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. He went to bed and bumped his head and he couldn't get up in the morning. How scary is that? Now, I remember singing this song, clapping my hands and having the children join me in clapping their hands and sing the song and stomp all around the room, until one child came and asked me, "Ma'am, what happened to the old man?" So I said, nothing happened to him. He's fine. Is he hurt? Why do you think he's hurt? Because he bumped his head, ma'am. And then, did he die? How do you tell a 3-year-old child that no bacha, this man is not dead. He just bumped his head. But then if he bumped his head, why could he not get up in the morning? You're understanding what I'm saying? The poems are lovely. They're foot tapping. They keep us, they make us stand up. They make us smile. They make us clap our hands. They make the children energetic. But what is the relevance of all of this when we are teaching our children these days? Another easy one. Mary had a little lamb. I used to love this because this is like a long poem, and by the time you finish the poem, my child would have gone to sleep. So Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, he was sure to go. He followed her to school one day, which was against the rules. It made the children laugh and play to see the lamb at school. So the teacher turned it out, and still it lingered there, and waited patiently till Mary did appear. Very sweet poem. You can actually, for us, our generation, we can actually imagine a lamb over there, with a forlorn look, following Mary all over the place. And how beautiful, how cute is that? But is this possible? The questions asked to me were, what is a lamb? Again, when we are talking about urban setup, we're talking of children in cities. They have probably never seen a lamb. They would have seen a goat, maybe at the butcher shop. They would have seen a cow, maybe a cow, a buffalo, a calf, maybe walking on the roads. But they have hardly had an opportunity to see a lamb. What is a fleece? Yes, we can show them pictures of it. We can show them, movies of lambs and, all of that. But the child, it doesn't relate. That retention is not there because the child has not experienced it, has not felt it. One child came up to me and asked me, "Ma'am, if he is put outside the classroom, won't he be stolen? Won't some thief come and steal it?" Good question. Ma'am, Mama doesn't even get me a dog. And Mary's so lucky that she got a lamb. Imagine the innocence. And these are questions that I have not made up. These are questions that were genuinely asked to me by these young children. So there you have. Now, how do we learn? Now, this is a chart, this is a diagram, a pyramid that all of you educators out there have seen, learned in your trainings. You've gone through this. You probably have this stuck somewhere on your board too. So how do we learn? 10% of what we learn is what we read. 20 is what we hear. 30% is what we look and see. 50% of what we see and hear. Now, remember the difference. There is 30% of looking, seeing, not just looking, but actually seeing. There's a difference between that. 50% is seeing and listening and hearing to it. 70% is of what we discuss. We keep asking questions, we keep repeating it. 80% is of what we do, what we understand it as. 95% is of what we teach. Now, when we talk about children over here, we're not necessarily talking about them going and teaching, but we're talking about them actually discussing it with people, what they learn from school, whether they're able to go back home and discuss this with their parents, with their peers, with their siblings. Are they able to have this dialogue? Are they able to have that continuation from school right up to their homes? Now, I will also mention a couple of things that actually are relatable. So let's take this poem, 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe. Again, a very sweet poem. 1, 2, Buckle My Shoe. 3, 4, Knock on the Door. 5, 6, Pick Up Sticks. 7, 8, Lay Them Straight. 9, 10, A Big Fat Hen. Now here, this is doable. This is relatable. Why? I can count on my fingers. 1 to 10, I can count. So 1, 2, 3, I can go on like that. So I can see, I can hear because I'm singing. It is teaching me something. Buckling my shoe. Of course, now children don't buckle their shoe. Maybe they have a belt, so they learn to buckle it themselves. They learn to tie up their laces themselves. So they're learning that. They're learning counting, like I said. They're learning to buckle up. They're learning to tie their laces. They're using actions. You know, they're knocking on the door. There's some action over there. So when they knock, they know that when you go tuck, 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 that's a knock. You use your knuckle. This is your knuckle. You knock on the door, and this is the sound that it makes. Tuck, 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 as opposed to dhar, dhar, dhar. The difference? It's relatable. The child can relate to that action. The child can relate to the sound that is coming from there. The child can relate to what he's seeing. His reaction to every action. He does tuck, tuck on the door, the reaction, the sound that comes back. Of course, this leads to laughter. And who has not seen a hen? Any child, whether you're in the villages, whether you're in small cities, whether you're in big cities, whether you're in Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, anywhere, you have seen a hen. If you have not seen a hen running around your grandparents' yard, then you've probably seen a hen sitting, waiting to be butchered at the butcher shop. So you have seen chickens of all sizes and shapes and, you know, state of hygiene, but you've seen it. So a hen is relatable. This is a poem that I picked up and I liked it. This is in Hindi. And why I liked it is one, because during the course of all the searching and all the researching I did, I realized that our regional languages had more to offer in terms of relatable poetry, in terms of relatable stories, in terms of relatable content, things that if you read out to a child, the child immediately has an image in his mind, can immediately recall that I had seen this somewhere. So this is about पेड़ हमारा साथी है. पेड़ हमारा साथी है, छाया हमको देता है, बाढ़ से हमें बचाता है, मीठे फल भी देता है, पेड़ कितना जरूरी है, फिर भी बेचारा कटता है, हमें भी पेड़ लगाए, हम भी पेड़ लगाएंगे, संसार को हरा भरा बनाएंगे. So relatable, especially now when we are trying and celebrating every day, World Environment Day, tree plantation drives are happening. It's relatable. The child can see the trees. the child. This is an action-oriented poem. You take the child out into the garden, let him actually dig a hole, let him plant a seedling, let him plant a sapling, let him see it grow, let him enjoy as it grows, as it thrives. What does this teach us? It's consequential. The child sees the consequences of planting something and seeing it grow, seeing it, these are the learnings. It's a hands-on activity. He can actually get down or, get into the mud, get dirty, feel the mud, feel his roots. It's a fun play. It teaches him language. Now, words like bard. What is bard? For a 3-year-old child, bard makes no sense. But when you tell him that जब बहुत बारिश होती है, when there is heavy rains and there is flooding, that's a bard. When water gushes, you had the biggest bard of all times we had in Kedarnath. There are movies for it as examples. That is the imagery we are talking about. The child can relate to it. He knows, as opposed to Wee Willie Winky runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs in his nightgown. The child cannot relate to a Wee Willie Winky, one, because you would not be allowed to run around town in your night suit. You're understanding where I'm going with this. Let's pick up another one. This is something that I came across today and I was really happy to see this. A rhyming rolling rice. Here, there's a child who's saying, I won't eat, I won't eat. I tell her so many times. She smiles and with her magic hands rolls the rice into rhymes. It rhymes. There's a thump to it. There's a tempo to it. It's fun to listen to. This little bite for Dada Dadi. This little one for Chachu. This one more bite for Papa, Mommy. And the last bite is for you. It rhymes. It makes sense because every child has gone through this phase in his life. Every child, every parent out there, every educator who has meals in school has seen this. Whether didis are trying to force feed the children and say, "Bacha, ek aur kha le, this is you." I have done this for my children, made small balls of rice and said, "Okay, this is you. This is your best friend. This is the boy who bullies you in school. Would you want to eat him first or your best friend?" Things like that. What are we trying to do over here? One is it's relatable. We're using a lot of hand gestures. We're making balls. We're feeding the child. We're counting number of balls on the plate. There is an interaction. Who do you want this ball to be? Should it be Dada or should it be Dadi? The child is interacting with you. There's play happening. The child wants to play. The child is now invested in what you're trying to teach the child. The child is invested and engaged in what you're trying to do. All the teachers who ever walk into the doors of a school, who walk into that amazing place where you impart knowledge, you have all put in enough effort at home to learn your subject for the day and then to give it out to your children. So imagine how much fun it will be if your child is interacting with you. Whatever you say, if it makes sense to your child right away, if he has an image in his mind and he can say, "Yes, ma'am, I understand." Win. That's a win. That's a fabulous win. Social skills. Your child now knows who all is in his family. So your student is there and your student can tell you, "My chacha, chachi live with me." Somebody else will say, "My cousins live with me." Now they know that there are relationships beyond mummy, papa, dada, dadi. There are cousins, there are siblings, there are uncles, maternal family, paternal people from both sides of the family. There is a maid who's lived with us all her life, who's taken care of me since I was a child. Social skills, we're teaching that to the child, and it is relatable because the child knows that, yes, I can see these people. I can see their relevance. I can see these relationships in my daily life. Oh, I hope I'm not going on and on. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Let's talk about a couple more relatable things. Now, this is something we've all sang. Ringa, ringa roses, pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. Now, when we were singing it, the Indianized version of it was Ringa, ringa roses, pocket full of poses. I don't know why we used to sing poses, but we used to say poses. And we used to say, Hasha, busha, we all fall down. Right? Because that's how it sounded better to us. Instead of that, now what is posies? How many children, actually, how many educators know what posies are? You have to explain that to your child. So posies are a bouquet of small, delicate flowers. It's a delicate bouquet, you know, the kind that you see. The latest example that I could give you is probably of Princess Meghan Markle at her wedding when she had that small bouquet, the dainty looking, the delicate looking bouquet. That is what a posies is, you know, a posy is. But for us, it is not relatable because we Indians, per se, when we talk of a bouquet, we talk about the bigger the better. 100 roses आते हैं तो उसमें 150 डाल दो, you know, make it look that much better, that much larger, that much grander. Instead, there is another poem which follows the same rhyme, the same rhythm of Ringa Ringa Roses. Over here, I don't know whether you can read it, but here it says, walk around the circle, walk around the circle, walk around the circle, we all fall down. And then you go on, stomp around the circle. So you can have children holding hands and going around in a circle, singing this to the same tune of Ringa Ringa Roses, and then make them do different things. So there are tiptoe, you have jump, you have prowl, you have gallop, you have crawl, so many things. You're making the child, you know, go through a complete workout. All the parts of their body are moving. I'm sure the child is going to get really tired by the end of that session, that period, but you have achieved to keep the child engaged, to keep the child happy. The child has enjoyed himself, has enjoyed herself with her friends, and in the process also learned things which will remain in their mind. If I, clap my hands, this is the sound that comes. If I stomp my feet, that is the sound that's going to come. If I crawl, this is how it looks. Relatability. Now this, again, when we talk about clarity with creativity, this is a My Body song. And I'm so happy to know that this is one of the rhymes which is available in the IGCSE pre-primary books. And I had one of the teachers send this to me, and I was so happy to see this. So the child is saying, I have two sharp ears with which I hear. Again, there is a tempo to it, there's music to it. You keep doing that with each body part. So you have, hands with which I clap, a nose with which I sniff. So the child is learning actions. The child is learning to, what every part of the body is going to be used. And he knows that if he has two eyes, his friend has two eyes, the girl sitting in front of him has two eyes, the teacher has two eyes, and everybody is the same. There is no such thing differentiating us. Even if there is a specially able child or a different child in the class, everything remains the same. Two hands, two legs, two eyes, two ears. Of course, if you have a class full of children who are special, then you need to change your poem accordingly. Because unfortunately, our books do not come printed with such sensitive content. But we can work with it. This poem, as opposed to what poem I learned as a child, Chubby Cheeks. And I can tell you something about this. I was the butt of jokes every time this poem came up because I was chubby. I still am chubby. So chubby cheeks, dimpled chin, rosy lips, teeth within curly hair. I have curly hair, very fair. Eyes are blue, teacher's pet. Is that you? Are you trying to tell the child that if you have all of this, you are fair, you have curly hair, you have chubby cheeks and blue eyes, then you are your teacher's pet? See, we are living in a time and age where children are questioning these things. There is a child who has come up to me and asked me, ma'am, my eyes are black. Do you not like me? So of course, I love you, bacha. You're the cutest. Children are asking these questions. These are not, blue eyes are not relatable. They cannot understand. They've hardly seen a child with blue eyes. They've seen black, they've seen brown, maybe they've seen gray. You're understanding? Our context has to change. This is another poem that I picked up and I was so happy to read this. Udti Patang. Again, like I told you, our vernacular books have much better, much relatable content as opposed to the English books, because vernacular, the languages are so rich and they have so much depth. depth in expression, depth in feeling. And I think there is a lesson or two that we as educators and even those who set the curriculum can take from the vernacular medium. Because look at this poem. It says, Udti patang, matak matak kar, पूछ हिलाती आसमान में उड़ी पतंग, खुली हवा में लहराती उड़ उड़ाकर चली पतंग. Pardon my Hindi, it's not too great, but I'm trying. I'm making an effort. Why is this related to me? I see, therefore I learn. This is what I've been trying to emphasize. Here, with this kind of a poem, there are like multiple learning opportunities or teaching opportunities for teachers, for educators. You can have a kite making activity. So imagine by the end of this poem, by the end of that, that week of going through this poem, that child will remember this poem by rote and with feeling because he has felt it. It has touched her somewhere deep within. You have a kite making activity. You have a kite flying activity. Maybe you can call the parents and let them come, let them have fun. You can talk about wind energy. Yes, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old might not understand wind energy in all its technicalities, but you can talk about wind energy. When the wind comes in from the right, the kite will go to the left. When the wind comes in from the left, it will go to the right. If there is no wind at all, the kite will fall down, it will not fly. And if the wind is really strong, if the gust of wind is really strong, your kite might not fly because it will not take off. It seems a bit too much, but it really isn't. And I'm sure all the educators out here who are listening to this right now know they have done this somewhere when they have been teaching children. We have used these examples. The only problem is that it has not been documented. Each educator out here has used his or her own methodology in making a lesson easier for her class. But if collectively we can come together and say, these are the methodologies we should use, these are the things that will make it relatable to children, make it engaging, then there's nothing like it. Let's go on to the next one. Yes, competition. We can also, inculcate a sense of healthy competition in your children when you have activities like this with a simple poem like this. What is this poem about? This poem is about a kite. It's about a boy who's flying a kite in the wind and how he's enjoying it. That same joy, that smile on the child's face can be transferred to your children's faces because they will enjoy this. And once you do this with your child, with your children, believe me, this poem is going to remain ingrained in their brains, in their minds. Let's go on to the next one. This is again a very sweet poem that I read today, Cheeti Rani. What is a cheetah? We're talking about a small ant, an insignificant ant that probably walks around in your house and you squash it with your feet because you don't want it to, damage any of your, groceries or, bite your child, whatever. But look at how beautiful this ant has been given character. And this ant, when your child listens to this poem about, सयानी चीटी रानी मीठी चीजें की दीवानी जितनी चीटी उतनी गुण. You're talking about this small little ant who's capable of doing so many things. It can move big, humongous sizes of grains of sugar, grains which are bigger than it in volume and size and weight. But she's able to do that. So you're teaching your child that, yes, this is very small. This is probably an insignificant piece, an insignificant creature in our home. But this little ant is capable of so much. And you, my dear child, are also capable like the ant. So this poem, when you recite it to your child, do it with actions, probably catch an ant and, show, or probably have a line of sugar there and have the ants walk across. Imagine the kind of engagement that you're doing with your children. Imagine the kind of reactions and actions and all of that. They're like sponge, these children. They're soaking it all in. It's going to make so much of a difference to the way they're going to be perceiving things. So here we're looking at it at the micro level, things they see around them. It increases their observation power. They will now be actually vigilant. They will now be actually aware of what is around them, and not just things that are on their mobile or on their tabs or on their laptops, but things that are available around them. You know, when we were children, there have been days when we would sit, on the windowsill looking out into nothing without really thinking about anything. We'd be just sitting there. And yet, I think those are the times when we would be thinking of really amazing things. I'm sure many of the ideas that come to you now have come from those times when you were sitting on the windowsill looking into space with that blank look on your face. So that is what we need to give our children. The opportunity, the chance to look at these tiny, tiny creatures and learn from them. We don't need, the poem Incy Wincy Spider. That's a good one. Climbed up the water spout. So we are talking about perseverance over there. But when you have little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curd and whey, down came a spider, and I'm sorry, I forgot the rest of the poem. But when you hear that poem, I remember when I heard that poem, I was petrified of spiders. But today I have a child who, when she sees a spider, she wants to catch it in a bottle and look at it. She's curious. She wants to see. And why did this come about? Because she saw a movie called Charlotte's Web, where you have an ant and you have a piglet, and the ant is, no, you have a spider and a piglet, and the spider is weaving these amazing messages with her web. That is the imagery which made an impact on my child's mind. And ever since she saw that movie, she's been wanting to pick up these spiders and see what they can do. What are the miracles that come from these little tiny creatures? It teaches your child skills, perseverance, resilience, to go on despite how difficult a situation might be. It teaches patience and takes away fear. You know, if that little ant is not thought of, "Ee, katega, mujhe infection hoga," instead, if it is looked at as something that can teach you something, imagine the difference. The narrative has changed. You're just changing that narrative from something that is fearful and something that you should be fearful of. You have now made that the hero. With movies like Ant-Man and all of that coming out, ants have really become heroes. We just need to tap in on that. With that, I'm done with poems. And I know that, poems is something that we start off with in school. We try to teach our children that, especially nursery, junior, lower and upper KGs. It's fun because there is, like I said, a tempo to it. There is music to it. It's fun. You can do actions and you can generally create a very happy environment. Let's do that. Let's continue doing that. But let's pick up poems which are relatable, which I can see, which I can hear, which I can feel, which I can believe in. Now, Row, Row, Row Your Boat, again, a very, a classic poem. But how many children have rowed a boat? How many have actually sat in a boat and had the opportunity to do this? Or maybe we can do this as an exercise for all your children. You know, whenever you sing this poem in school, for the weekend, you tell the parents, your homework for this weekend or this month is to take your child boating. And it should be a row boat and not a speed boat or one with the pedals. It creates a lifelong learning for the child. Because at the end of the day, whatever we are doing is towards that aim of being able to leave a lasting impression on our child, or being able to leave an impression on our student, an impression that will shape how the child is going to be in the future, will shape his thought process, will shape her imagination and her creativity. So let's start with that. I come to storybooks. If you look at any of the books that are prescribed for these pre-primary children, we have books like these. Dragafellow is one of my favoriteest books. Ugly Duckling, Jungle Book. Who doesn't love Jungle Book? These are good books. These are books which have a story, which have a moral at the end. These are books which teach our children something. But what concerns me is that we come from a country which is so rich, so culturally rich. We are so diverse, but we have such a wealth, volume of wealth in our stories that come from our ancestors. Why don't we use that? There is this debate which is raging nowadays, which talks about how Ramayana and Mahabharata are not myths. They are actual things that happen because you have scriptures that have documented all of that. That aside, maybe it's still a little difficult for people to believe that, there was a king who was banished for 14 years, who would do that to their child, all of those questions. That aside, there are learnings that we can pick up from there. There are stories that we can pick up from our culture, from our heritage. So things like, let me see if I have put in a, yes, I just saw that this, somebody's video is off. Okay, this story that is there in our IGC books for the pre-primary this year, where story, I think this is a story from the Panchatantra, where there is a hungry fox, and then he saw a crow with a piece of, I think the original story talks about a piece of bread in its mouth. But here we have a very exotic crow who has paneer in his mouth. But here, can you see how it has been changed, adapted? Paneer is something that most children love. So the children can relate to it. Oh, yes, the crow would definitely take paneer because it's so yummy. And yes, the fox would want to eat the paneer. Maybe the child doesn't know what a fox is. Maybe the child will probably never have the opportunity of seeing a fox in the open, only in jungles and only in the zoo. But you can change the fox into any other animal. Here we are keeping it the fox because you want to keep that the relevance of a sly fox and a smart fox kind of a thing. So this is one of the stories which is there in our IGCSE pre-primary books, and I'm so happy to see that it is a story taken from our very own books. Similar stories about the monkey and the parrots who got stuck in the hunter's net. Again, a story very relevant. Now, when I read such a story to my child, I will also try to bring in some imagery that they have seen, that has left an impression on their mind, and a scene that, they keep thinking whenever they are in trouble. So if you remember the movie Finding Nemo, towards the end when Nemo, his father, and Dory unite, suddenly Nemo and Dory are caught in a fishing frenzy, and they're caught in a net where all the other, I think, I don't know what kind of fish they are. They're all caught in a net, and they're getting pulled up. And Nemo tells his father, just tell everybody to keep swimming down. So in this, the story is about how these parrots, collectively gather together and they fly in unison, and they are able to take the net away with them. So my example would be that story in Finding Nemo, where Nemo convinced every other fish to swim down. And when they kept swimming down, they were able to break the anchor of the net, and they were able to go free. So these are imagery. See, we are lucky to be in an age where we have movies which show all of this. So pick up an example from there. But again, why do we want to go to the Western world for examples? Why are we not able to take some examples from what we see in our daily lives? It's about, let's experience to learn. That is what was the aim of my talk today. It's about how, when you see, when you learn, when you hear, when you feel, is when something is relatable to you. When something leaves a lasting impression on you, when something leaves an impact on you. And when that impact is there, is when it makes sense to you. And that is when it remains. The retention power and the recall power goes up when you have all of this playing together. So that, my friends, thank you. It's my talk. I'm Vandana Joshil. I'm a storyteller. I have a page called Ardakshar on Facebook. I'm where I share stories, and I share stories over there, stories that I write myself, stories which are meant to give some kind of leave a lasting impression on children, because stories are what take you to a world outside of your own. I'm also a content creator and writer. I'm the managing director of Lajja and Lajja TV, which is a forum for women's self-development and growth. Most importantly, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, and I'm a lifelong learner. Thank you so much. I think Michelle is on mute.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. And indeed, it has been a session that is insightful. Thank you for expounding such, I would say, crucial and, integral, aspects of teaching. That it has to be relatable. I think we as individuals also always like to relate whatever we are told, and we have long forgotten children would also want that. And we just try to feed them in with information, and just feed it. When we have kids at home, the only important thing that runs on the mind of a mother is, I'm supposed to feed. So if the child is
Absolutely.
crying, we feed. We don't know that the child is crying because something is aching. And that's what is happening with, I think, our education system too now. Teachers are becoming mothers, and we only feed and feed and feed. If the teacher is talking, if the child is talking, okay, take this. Okay, you need this. And we don't cater to the problem. And issues are all
Absolutely.
shoved under the carpet. Thank you so much for bringing this out this evening. So I will
Thank
give it
you.
over to also our panelists, our participants who have joined us. If there's any question you want to ask, we can take a few questions. Ma'am is with us, and this is one of the best opportunities that we could grab, to get answers, get insights from ma'am. So if there's anybody, you could also put your questions in the chat box if you are apprehensive of speaking, and I will convey that, and I will ask that on behalf of you, and we'll get the answers. So if there's anybody who wants to ask questions, quickly, I have two participants raise their hands, so you could unmute and you could ask your question. There is one I can see, Kamla Srinivas is raising his hand, his or her hand. And it's Vaishali, if I'm saying it right. I don't know. Can you unmute? Or you can't?
I have given them the rights to speak. I mean, but
All right.
no
Thank
one's
you.
really saying anything.
Okay.
There's a question in the chat which says, which is from Sangram, who says it's time to redesign our education system and make it more realistic. Absolutely true. Actually, I was just, irrespective of the board we come from, whether it is the state board, ICSE, CBSE, IGCSE, or even IB. Let's start from home. Let's start with stories and rhymes that a child can relate to. So here, it's not so much as an effort by the educators. Of course, it's a big effort that the educators can put in. But I think here, whoever is designing the curriculum, those stakeholders are the ones who need to really sit down and discuss the relevance and the importance of taking relative imagery from our scriptures, from our day-to-day existence, and use that to teach our children. I hope I answered you, Sangram.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm sure that using props and images makes it helps in students getting to relate with whatever we are teaching.
There's also somebody who's written that she uses, Celine says that she uses the imagery of the ants when the kids are walking down the stairs. Yes, students, why can't we walk in a queue when ants can? So true. When we do that, when we are using that for regular examples, why can't we use these even when we are teaching our children? Pick up a story about an ant, talk to them about that ant, and instead of going through books and poems which, like I said, are not really, you cannot relate to it. So let's redesign our curriculums and our books if possible.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much. And it was really an eye opener as well. At I would say the right time, because right now most of us are online, and very soon we might go back to the regular setup. Let's go with a fresh mind. Let's go with a new outlook, a new approach, a new perspective, and something that should have been done long ago, but it's never late than never. So, it's better late than never. So,
Absolutely.
I think that is what you have left us with today. And again, I would say thank you on behalf of APA. Thank you for such a wonderful professional development workshop that we had today. I'm sure all of us are empowered to think differently and also to make others think differently. The first question that we need to ask ourselves is, do I relate with it? If I relate with it, then somebody else will relate with it. If I don't relate with it, I don't think my children will relate with it. And I think it's about time we think about everything that's relatable, because anything that's relatable is easily teachable. So thank you so much once again. Thank you everyone. Thank you dear participants. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you APA for making this evening an insightful one. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Namaste to all of you.